I never thought I'd be the kind of person who obsessively checks their bank statements, but here I am, hunched over my laptop in the tiny corner of our apartment that I've claimed as my home office. The gentle hum of the ceiling fan does little to calm my nerves as I scroll through what seems like an endless list of transactions. My eyes dart from one line to the next, each unfamiliar charge feeling like a punch to the gut. What the hell? I mutter, squinting at the screen. There it is again, another charge for a fancy restaurant I've never even heard of. And right below it, a bill from some high-end hotel in the Maldives. The Maldives. I've never even left the country. I lean back in my chair, running my hands through my hair. This can't be happening. But as I continue to scroll, the evidence becomes impossible to ignore. Luxury airline tickets, spa treatments, designer boutiques, it's like looking at someone else's life. Someone with a lot more money and a lot fewer worries than me. My mind races, trying to make sense of it all. Could this be a mistake? Identity theft? But as I look closer at the dates and locations, a sickening realization begins to dawn on me. These charges line up perfectly with Ryan's recent business trips. My husband, the man I've shared my life with for the past 5 years, might be living a double life right under my nose. I think back to the past few weeks, how distant Ryan has been. Always coming home late, barely looking me in the eye when we talk. I chalked it up to stress at work, maybe a rough patch in our relationship. But now I'm not so sure. My hands are shaking as I reach for my phone. I want to call him, to demand answers, but something stops me. A memory surfaces, a conversation from our last family dinner with Ryan's mother, Judy. She'd been going on and on about needing a break and how Ryan always took such good care of her. I'd brushed it off at the time. Judy has always had a flair for the dramatic. But now, those words take on a whole new meaning. Could Ryan be using my credit card to fund a lavish vacation for himself and his mother? The thought makes me feel sick. Judy has never exactly been my biggest fan. From the moment Ryan introduced us, she made it clear that she didn't think I was good enough for her precious son. Over the years, I've tried everything to win her over, cooking her favorite meals, remembering every birthday and anniversary, even putting up with her not-so-subtle jabs about my career choices. But nothing ever seemed to be enough. I take a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I need to think clearly. If Ryan and Judy are really behind this, confronting them without proof would be a disaster. I can already imagine Judy's smug face, Ryan's denial. No, I need to be smart about this. With trembling fingers, I dial the number for my bank. As I wait on hold, my eyes drift to the photos on my desk. Ryan and me on our wedding day, both of us grinning like idiots. A selfie from our last vacation, my head resting on his shoulder as we watch the sunset. Were we happy then? Or was it all just an act? Thank you for calling Oakville Community Bank. This is Sarah. How may I assist you today? The cheerful voice on the other end of the line snaps me back to reality. Hi, Sarah, I say, surprised by how steady my voice sounds. I need to report some unauthorized charges on my credit card. As I go through the process of canceling my card and freezing our joint account, a strange calm settles over me. It's like I'm watching myself from outside my body, hearing my own voice calmly explain the situation to Sarah. She's sympathetic, assuring me that the bank will investigate the charges and that I won't be held responsible for any fraudulent activity. Is there anything else I can help you with today, Mrs. Thompson? Sarah asks after we've gone through all the necessary steps. I pause for a moment. Actually, yes. Can you tell me if there have been any large withdrawals from our joint savings account recently? There's a brief silence on the line as Sarah checks. Yes, Mrs. Thompson. There was a withdrawal of $5,000 made yesterday at 2:15 p.m. from an ATM in downtown Oakville. My heart sinks. That's it then. The final piece of evidence I needed. Ryan must have known I was close to discovering his scheme. He's probably planning to leave, to run off with his mother on their ill-gotten vacation. Thank you, Sarah, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. That's all I needed to know. As I hang up the phone, I feel something shift inside me. The shock and hurt are still there, but they're being pushed aside by something else. Anger. Determination. I've spent years trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law. I've bent over backward to make everyone else happy. But where has that gotten me? I stand up, my legs a bit shaky but my resolve firm. I walk to the window, looking out at the quiet street below. Our neighbors are going about their day, oblivious to the fact that my world is crumbling around me. Mrs. Jenkins is watering her prized roses. The Wilson kids are chasing each other on their bikes. Life goes on, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. I turn back to my desk, my eyes falling on a framed quote that my best friend, Samantha, gave me when I started my own small business last year. "The only way out is through," it reads. I trace the words with my finger, feeling a spark of something that feels a lot like hope. Ryan thinks he's won. He probably assumes I'll fall apart when I discover what is done. That I'll beg him to come back, to forgive me for whatever imagined slight he's using to justify his actions. But he's wrong. He has no idea what I'm capable of. I pull out a notebook and start making a list. First, I need to document everything. Every charge, every withdrawal, every lie. I'll need it all if this ends up in court. Next, I need to secure my assets. Whatever's left in our accounts, whatever's solely in my name, I need to protect it all. As I write, I feel my strength returning. Each item on the list is a step towards reclaiming my life, my independence. I think about all the dreams I've put on hold for the sake of our marriage. The trips I wanted to take, the risks I was too afraid to take with my business. Well, no more. I glance at the clock. Ryan won't be home for hours. Good. I need time to put my plan into action. I pick up my phone again, this time dialing Samantha's number. If anyone can help me navigate this mess, it's her. "Hey, Em." Samantha's cheerful voice fills the line. "What's up?" I take a deep breath. "Sam, I need your help. It's about Ryan. He's been stealing from me." There's a pause, then Samantha's voice comes back, low and serious. "I'm on my way. Don't do anything until I get there, okay?" As I hang up, I feel a weight lift off my shoulders. I'm not alone in this. I have people in my corner, people who believe in me. Ryan and Judy might think they've got it all figured out, but they have no idea what's coming. I look around our apartment, at all the little touches that made this place feel like home. The throw pillows I spent weeks picking out. The art prints we bought on our honeymoon. The plant that Ryan swore he'd keep alive but that I've been secretly watering for months. It all looks different now, tainted by the knowledge of Ryan's betrayal. But as I stand there, surrounded by the remnant of our life together, I make a promise to myself. This is not the end of my story. It's just the beginning of a new chapter. And this time, I'm the one who's going to write it. The sound of a key in the lock makes me jump. Is Ryan home early? But no, it's just the old pipes creaking. I shake my head, trying to clear the paranoia. I need to stay focused, stay strong. Whatever happens next, I'll be ready for it. I hear a car pull up outside, and a moment later, there's a knock at the door. I open it to find Samantha standing there, concern etched on her face. She takes one look at me and pulls me into a tight hug. "Oh, honey," she says softly. "I'm so sorry. But we're going to figure this out, okay? You and me, just like always." As I let her in, closing the door on the life I thought I knew, I feel a strange mix of sadness and excitement. The road ahead won't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm on the right path. Ryan's betrayal might have broken my heart, but it's also set me free. And I intend to make the most of that freedom, no matter what it takes. The hours crawled by as Samantha and I formulated our plan. We pored over bank statements, made countless phone calls, and even consulted with a lawyer friend of hers. By the time we heard Ryan's key in the lock, I felt simultaneously exhausted and wired, like I'd drunk too much coffee on an empty stomach. "You've got this, Em," Samantha whispered, giving my hand a squeeze before slipping out the back door. We'd agreed it would be better if I confronted Ryan alone, at least initially. I stood in the kitchen, my heart pounding so hard I was sure Ryan would hear it. He walked in, tossing his keys on the counter with a clatter that made me flinch. He didn't even look at me as he started rifling through a stack of mail. "Hey," I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. "We need to talk." Ryan glanced up, his expression a mix of irritation and something else I couldn't quite place. "Guilt, maybe. Can it wait? I've had a long day." I took a deep breath. It was now or never. I cancelled the credit card. The change in Ryan's demeanor was instant and shocking. His head snapped up, eyes wide with disbelief and, was that fury? "What did you just say?" His voice was dangerously quiet. I stood my ground, even as every instinct screamed at me to back down. "You heard me. I know what you've been doing, Ryan. Using my card to fund your little getaway with Judy. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Ryan's face contorted with anger as he stepped towards me. "How dare you?" he roared, his voice so loud it seemed to shake the walls. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I had plans, commitments. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything he'd done, he was trying to make me feel guilty. "Commitments?" I spat back. "What about your commitment to me, Ryan? To our marriage? You violated my trust, ignored our financial struggles, and for what? A fancy vacation with your mother." But Ryan wasn't listening. He slammed his fist on the countertop, making me jump. "You've made me look like a fool," he snarled. "How am I supposed to explain this to my mother?" I felt like I was seeing Ryan clearly for the first time, and the sight made my stomach churn. This wasn't the man I married. This was a stranger, someone capable of betrayal and manipulation I never thought possible. "Your mother?" I echoed, incredulous. "That's what you're worried about? Ryan, do you even understand what you've done to me? To us?" He stepped closer, his face inches from mine. I could smell the coffee on his breath, see the vein pulsing in his forehead. "Fix this," he growled. "Restore the card. Now. Or I swear, Emma, you'll regret it." I felt a chill run down my spine. Was he threatening me? The Ryan I thought I knew would never do that. But then again, the Ryan I thought I knew wouldn't have stolen from me either. Or what? I challenged, surprised by my own boldness. "What will you do, Ryan?" His eyes narrowed. "Either you fix this, or you sign divorce papers. Your choice." The ultimatum hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell him that I'd already spoken to a lawyer, that I was one step ahead of him. But the look in his eyes made me hesitate. I'd never seen him like this before, and it scared me. "Fine," I muttered, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. "Do what you want." Ryan's posture relaxed slightly, a smug smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He thought he'd won. Little did he know, I was already 10 steps ahead of him. "I knew you'd see reason," he said, his tone patronizing. "I'll call the bank in the morning. And Emma, let's not have this conversation again, okay?" I nodded mutely, not trusting myself to speak. Ryan turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me alone with the echo of his threats and the bitter taste of defeat. As soon as I heard the bedroom door close, I sagged against the counter, my legs suddenly too weak to support me. I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands, typing out a quick message to Samantha. "It's done." He bought it. Her reply came almost instantly. "You okay? Need me to come back?" I considered it for a moment. Part of me desperately wanted the comfort of my best friend, someone to tell me that I wasn't crazy, that I was doing the right thing. But another part of me knew that I needed to stand on my own 2 feet. This was my battle to fight. "I'm okay," I typed back. "Talk tomorrow?" After sending the message, I looked around the kitchen. Everything looked the same: the chipped mug Ryan always used for his morning coffee, the silly magnet I'd bought on our last vacation, the calendar on the fridge with all our shared plans and dreams. But it all felt different now, tainted by the knowledge of Ryan's betrayal. I made my way to the guest room, knowing I couldn't bear to sleep next to Ryan tonight. As I lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, I replayed the confrontation in my mind. Had I made the right choice in backing down? Should I have stood my ground, consequences be damned? But deep down, I knew I'd made the smart play. Ryan and Judy thought they had won, that they'd cowed me into submission. Their overconfidence would be their downfall. While they were busy celebrating their victory, I'd be putting my plan into action. I thought about the steps Samantha and I had outlined earlier. First thing tomorrow, I'd be making some discreet calls, to my bank, to a divorce lawyer, to a real estate agent. By the time Ryan realized what was happening, it would be too late. As I drifted off into an uneasy sleep, I made a promise to myself. This would be the last night I spent feeling afraid in my own home. From here on out, I was taking control of my life. The next morning, I woke early, my body tense with anticipation. I could hear Ryan moving around in the kitchen, probably making his usual morning coffee. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself for what I knew would be an Oscar-worthy performance. I shuffled into the kitchen, doing my best to look subdued and contrite. Ryan glanced up from his phone, his expression a mixture of smugness and lingering anger. "Morning," I mumbled, avoiding eye contact as I reached for a mug. Ryan grunted in response, then said, "I called the bank. The card should be active again by this afternoon. Don't pull a stunt like that again, Em." "Hey, I mean it." I nodded, biting my tongue to keep from snapping back at him. Instead, I forced myself to sound meek. "I'm sorry. It won't happen again." He seemed satisfied with my response, turning his attention back to his phone. I watched him out of the corner of my eye as I sipped my coffee, marveling at how this man I once loved now felt like a complete stranger. "I'm heading out," Ryan announced, draining the last of his coffee. "Mom and I have some things to take care of before the trip. Don't wait up." As he walked out the door, I felt a weight lift off my chest. This was it. My chance to put everything in motion without him breathing down my neck. The moment I heard his car pull away, I sprang into action. First, a call to my bank to put a freeze on our joint accounts. Then, a conversation with a divorce lawyer Samantha had recommended. By lunchtime, I had an appointment scheduled with a real estate agent to discuss selling the house. As I worked, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness for the life I thought I had, anger at Ryan's betrayal, fear of the unknown future ahead of me. But underlying it all was a growing sense of excitement. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, in control of my own destiny. Mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan, "Cards active. Leaving with Mom tomorrow morning. We'll talk when I get back." I stared at the message, a bitter laugh escaping me. He really thought everything was back to normal, that I'd just roll over and accept his betrayal. Well, he was in for a rude awakening. I spent the rest of the day packing, carefully selecting the items that were truly mine, the things that held sentimental value. Photos from before I met Ryan, gifts from my parents, the first dollar I earned from my small business. With each item I packed, I felt lighter, more like myself. As night fell, I heard Ryan's key in the lock. I quickly shoved the packed boxes into the guest room closet and grabbed a book, trying to look casual as he walked in. "Hey," he said, his tone almost normal. Like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't threatened me with divorce just yesterday. "Hi," I replied, not looking up from my book. "There's leftover pasta in the fridge if you're hungry." He grunted in acknowledgement and headed to the kitchen. I listened to him moving around, heating up food, and felt a surprising lack of emotion. This man, who I once thought was my partner in everything, now felt like nothing more than a roommate. A deceitful, manipulative roommate. Later, as we got ready for bed, Ryan attempted to kiss me goodnight. I turned my head, his lips landing on my cheek instead. He pulled back, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. "Everything okay?" he asked. I forced a smile. "Just tired." "Have a good trip, Ryan." As I lay in bed, listening to Ryan's steady breathing beside me, I thought about the journey ahead. It wouldn't be easy. There would be tears, arguments, probably some ugly legal battles. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Whatever happened next, I knew I was strong enough to handle it. Tomorrow, Ryan would leave with his mother, thinking he had it all figured out. But while he was gone, I'd be reclaiming my life, piece by piece. And when he returned, he'd find a very different Emma waiting for him. With that thought, I closed my eyes, ready to face whatever challenges the next day would bring. The confrontation might be over, but the real battle was just beginning. The morning Ryan left with Judy, I woke up early, my stomach in knots. I listened to him move around the house, packing last-minute items and making phone calls. When he finally came to say goodbye, I pretended to be asleep. I couldn't bear to look him in the eye, knowing what I was about to do. As soon as I heard the front door close and his car pull away, I sprang into action. I had a week, 7 precious days to reclaim my life and set my plan in motion. The house felt different without Ryan's presence, both emptier and somehow more alive with possibility. I started by calling Samantha. "They're gone," I said when she picked up. "It's time." "I'll be right over," she replied, no hesitation in her voice. This is why I loved her. She was always there when I needed her, no questions asked. While waiting for Samantha, I logged onto my computer and pulled up Ryan's social media accounts. As expected, he was already posting about their trip. A selfie at the airport with Judy, both of them grinning like they didn't have a care in the world. The caption read, "Off on a much-needed vacation with my favorite lady." The comments were full of well wishes and people telling them to have a great time. If only they knew the truth. I was still staring at the photo when Samantha arrived, letting herself in with the spare key I'd given her years ago. She took one look at my face and the computer screen and shook her head. "Don't torture yourself, Em," she said gently, closing the laptop. "We've got work to do." She was right, of course. I took a deep breath and stood up. "Okay, where do we start?" We spent the next few hours making calls and sending emails. My lawyer, the real estate agent, the bank, it felt like we talked to half the town that morning. By lunchtime, my head was spinning with all the information and decisions I had to make. "Let's take a break," Samantha suggested, noticing my overwhelmed expression. "How about we grab some lunch at Joe's Diner? You look like you could use a change of scenery." I hesitated, glancing around at the mess of papers covering the dining room table. "I don't know, Sam. There's still so much to do. And it'll all still be here when we get back," she insisted, already grabbing her purse. "Come on, you need to eat. And I'm dying for one of Joe's burgers." Reluctantly, I agreed. As we walked the few blocks to the diner, I found myself noticing things I'd overlooked for years. The way the sunlight filtered through the leaves of the big oak tree on Main Street. The cheerful window displays in the small boutiques we passed. It was like I was seeing my town through new eyes. At the diner, we slid into a booth near the back. Joe himself came over to take our order, his familiar smile warming me from the inside out. "Emma, Samantha, good to see you girls." "The usual." I started to nod, then stopped myself. "Actually, Joe, I think I'll try something new today. What do you recommend?" Joe's eyebrows shot up in surprise. I'd been ordering the same chicken salad for years, but he recovered quickly. "Well, our new Southwest burger is pretty popular. Comes with avocado and a spicy aioli. Want to give it a shot?" "Sounds perfect," I said, ignoring Samantha's shocked expression. As Joe walked away, Samantha leaned across the table. "Okay, who are you and what have you done with my best friend?" I laughed, surprising myself with how genuine it sounded. "I guess I'm just ready for a change." We chatted while we waited for our food, carefully avoiding any mention of Ryan or the situation at home. It felt good to just be Emma again, not Ryan's wife or the woman dealing with a cheating husband. By the time our burgers arrived, I felt more relaxed than I had in weeks. "Oh my God," I moaned after taking my first bite. "Why have I never tried this before?" Samantha grinned. "Sometimes change is good." As we ate, I found myself people watching. There was old Mr. Peters on, reading his newspaper at the counter like he did every day. A young couple in the corner booth, holding hands across the table and looking at each other like they were the only two people in the world. A group of teenagers, laughing and talking animatedly over baskets of fries. I wondered what they would think if they knew my story. Would they pity me? Judge me? Or would they understand that sometimes, life takes unexpected turns, and all you can do is hold on and try to steer yourself in the right direction? After lunch, we headed back to the house, both of us feeling re-energized. We tackled the rest of the day's tasks with renewed vigor. By dinnertime, I had an appointment with a divorce lawyer for the next day, a meeting scheduled with a realtor to discuss putting the house on the market, and a list of potential apartments to check out. As Samantha was getting ready to leave, she paused at the door. "You know, I'm really proud of you. You're handling this whole thing like a champ." I felt a lump form in my throat. "I couldn't do it without you, Sam. Really, thank you." She pulled me into a tight hug. "That's what best friends are for. Now, get some rest. Tomorrow's another big day." After she left, I wandered through the house, really looking at it for the first time in years. So many memories in these rooms, both good and bad. The living room where Ryan and I had curled up on the couch for movie nights. The kitchen where we'd attempted to make a gourmet meal for our first anniversary, only to end up ordering pizza. The spare room that we'd once talked about turning into a nursery. I found myself in front of the bedroom mirror, studying my reflection. I looked tired, yes, but there was something else there too. A spark in my eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. Determination, maybe. Or hope. My phone buzzed with a notification. Against my better judgment, I checked it. Another post from Ryan, a picture of him and Judy on a pristine beach, cocktails in hand. The caption read, "Paradise found. Living our best lives." I stared at the photo, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, hurt, betrayal, but also, surprisingly, a sense of pity. Ryan thought he was living his best life, but he had no idea what he'd given up. He'd thrown away a partnership, a future, for what? A flashy vacation and his mother's approval? As I got ready for bed that night, I made a decision. I wouldn't look at Ryan's social media anymore. Let him live in his fantasy world of luxury hotels and overpriced cocktails. I had more important things to focus on. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Meetings with lawyers, discussions with real estate agents, long talks with Samantha and my parents. Each step I took felt like a move in the right direction, away from the life I'd been living and towards something new and exciting. I even found time to work on my small business, something I'd been neglecting lately. As I threw myself into designing new products and reaching out to potential clients, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was what I was meant to be doing, not playing second fiddle to Ryan's career and his mother's demands. By the time the week was drawing to a close, I'd accomplished more than I thought possible. I had a solid plan for moving forward with the divorce, a promising lead on a cute apartment downtown, and a meeting scheduled with a potential investor for my business. The night before Ryan was due to return, I sat on the patio, sipping a glass of wine and watching the sunset. The air was warm, filled with the sounds of crickets and distant laughter from the neighbor's barbecue. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "Flight lands at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Can you pick us up?" I stared at the message, a small smile playing on my lips. He had no idea what was waiting for him. Part of me felt a twinge of guilt. Was I being too harsh? But then I remembered the look in his eyes when he'd threatened me, the casual way he'd dismissed my feelings and our financial struggles. No, I decided. I wasn't being harsh. I was finally standing up for myself. I typed out a reply, "Sorry, I have plans tomorrow. You'll need to get a cab." Then I turned off my phone, not waiting for his response. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, I was going to enjoy this moment of calm before the storm. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon, I raised my glass in a silent toast. To new beginnings, to rediscovered strength, and to the journey ahead. Whatever happened next, I knew I was ready to face it head-on. The trip might be ending for Ryan and Judy, but for me, the real adventure was just beginning. The morning of Ryan's return dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions brewing inside me. I'd barely slept, tossing and turning all night, my mind racing with all the possible scenarios that could unfold. Now, as I sat at the kitchen table, nursing my third cup of coffee, I felt oddly calm. Whatever happened today, I was ready. I glanced at the clock, 9:45 a.m. Ryan's flight would be landing soon. Part of me wondered if he'd try to call when he realized I wasn't there to pick them up. I turned my phone back on, but so far, it had remained silent. Maybe he'd finally gotten the message that things weren't okay between us. At 10:30, I heard a car pull up outside. My heart rate spiked, but I forced myself to stay seated. I'd strategically positioned myself so I could see the driveway through the kitchen window. Sure enough, a taxi was idling by the curb, and there was Ryan, helping Judy out of the back seat. They both looked tanned and relaxed, still riding the high of their vacation. I watched as Ryan paid the driver and then lugged their suitcases up the path. Judy was chattering away, gesticulating wildly about something. Probably complaining about the flight, or the taxi, or both. Some things never change. The key turned in the lock, and I took a deep breath. This was it. "Emma," Ryan called out as he stepped inside. "We're home." I didn't respond. "Let him come find me." A few moments later, Ryan appeared in the kitchen doorway, a quizzical look on his face. "Didn't you hear us come in? Why didn't you pick us up from the airport?" I met his gaze steadily. "I told you I had plans." He frowned, clearly thrown off by my calm demeanor. "Plans? What plans could be more important than picking up your husband?" "Ex-husband," I corrected quietly. Ryan's eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked genuinely shocked. Then his expression hardened. "What are you talking about?" Just then, Judy bustled into the kitchen, still talking a mile a minute. "Ryan, dear, where should I put my new O?" She stopped short when she saw me. "Emma. How nice to see you." I nodded coolly in her direction but kept my focus on Ryan. "I think we need to talk. Alone." Ryan glanced between Judy and me, looking torn. Judy, however, seemed to sense the tension in the air. "I'll just go freshen up," she said, beating a hasty retreat. As soon as we heard the guest room door close, Ryan rounded on me. "What's this nonsense about ex-husband?" he hissed. "If this is about the credit card thing, I thought we'd moved past that." I couldn't help but laugh, though there was no humor in it. "Moved past it? Ryan, you stole from me. You lied to me. You threatened me. That's not something you just move past. He had the grace to look somewhat abashed, but quickly rallied. "Come on, Emma. It wasn't stealing. We're married. What's mine is yours, right?" "Wrong," I said, sliding a folder across the table towards him. "Not anymore." Ryan stared at the folder like it might bite him. "What's this?" "Divorce papers," I said simply. "I've already signed my part." The color drained from Ryan's face as he flipped open the folder, his eyes scanning the documents inside. "You can't be serious," he muttered. This is insane." I leaned back in my chair, watching him closely. "Is it? Tell me, Ryan, when did our marriage become a joke to you? When did you decide that your mother's happiness was more important than our future together?" He slammed the folder shut, his face flushing with anger. "Don't bring my mother into this. She has nothing to do with it. Doesn't she?" I countered. "She's always been there, Ryan. Always pushing, always criticizing. And you've always chosen her over me. Well, now you can have her all to yourself." Ryan's anger seemed to deflate, replaced by a look of desperation. "Emma, please. We can work this out. I'll make it up to you, I promise. We can go to counseling, take a vacation, whatever you want." I shook my head sadly. "It's too late for that, Ryan. I've spent the last week really thinking about our marriage, about who we are together and apart. And you know what? I realized that I've been unhappy for a long time. This theft, this betrayal, it was just the final straw." He reached across the table, trying to take my hand, but I pulled away. "Emma, please. I love you." For a moment, I felt my resolve waver. This was the man I'd promised to spend my life with, the man I'd once thought was my soulmate. But then I remembered the look in his eyes when he'd threatened me, the casual way he'd dismissed my feelings. The Ryan I loved was gone, if he'd ever really existed at all. "I'm sorry, Ryan," I said, standing up. "But love isn't enough." "Not anymore." Just then, Judy reappeared in the doorway, her eyes darting between us. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. I turned to her, suddenly feeling a surge of pity. This woman, who'd always seen me as a threat, who'd never given me a chance, she had no idea how much damage she'd done. "Everything's fine, Judy," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. In fact, I think you'll be happy to know that Ryan's all yours now. Judy's eyebrows shot up. What do you mean? I gestured to the folder on the table. I'm leaving. Ryan and I are getting a divorce. The look of shock on Judy's face quickly morphed into one of barely concealed glee. Oh, I see, she said, not even trying to hide her smile. Well, these things happen, I suppose. Don't worry, Ryan dear. I'm here for you. Ryan looked between Judy and me, seeming lost. Mom, can you give us a minute? Judy hesitated, clearly wanting to stay and gloat, but eventually nodded and left the room. As soon as she was gone, Ryan turned back to me, his eyes pleading. Emma, please. Don't do this. We can fix this. I shook my head, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. No, Ryan. We can't. But that's okay. Sometimes things fall apart so better things can fall together. He stared at me, looking truly bewildered. When did you become so strong? I supplied. I've always been strong, Ryan. I just forgot it for a while. But I remember now. I picked up my purse from the counter, slinging it over my shoulder. I'll be staying with Samantha for a while. My lawyer will be in touch about dividing our assets. I hope you find what you're looking for, Ryan. I really do. As I walked towards the door, I heard him call out behind me. Emma, wait. I paused, my hand on the doorknob, and looked back. Ryan was standing there, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. I'm sorry, he said softly. For everything. I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. I know. Goodbye, Ryan. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I felt like I could finally breathe again. The future stretched out before me, uncertain but full of possibility. I pulled out my phone and dialed Samantha's number. Hey, I said when she picked up. It's done. Can you come pick me up? I'm already on my way, she replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I ended the call and looked back at the house one last time. It was strange to think that just a few weeks ago, this had been my whole world. Now, it felt like nothing more than a chapter in a book I was ready to close. As I waited for Samantha, I thought about all the things I wanted to do now. Travel, focus on my business, maybe even start dating again someday. The possibilities were endless. When Samantha's car pulled up, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. This wasn't an ending, I realized. It was a beginning. As I climbed into the passenger seat, Samantha gave me a questioning look. You okay? I smiled, surprising myself with how genuine it felt. Yeah, I said. I really am. As we drove away, I didn't look back. The return was over, but my journey was just beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I couldn't wait to see where it would take me. The days following my departure from the house I once shared with Ryan blurred together in a whirlwind of activity. Samantha, true to her word, had been my rock through it all. Her guest room had become my sanctuary, a place where I could breathe and begin to piece together the shattered fragments of my life. It was on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, about a week after I'd left Ryan, that the full weight of the truth came crashing down on me. I was sorting through a box of old papers, bills, bank statements, and other financial documents I'd hastily grabbed before leaving, when I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. There, buried beneath a stack of credit card statements, was a letter from a fertility clinic. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, my eyes scanning the contents. It was dated just over a year ago, around the time Ryan and I had started seriously discussing having children. The letter detailed the results of Ryan's fertility tests. Tests I hadn't even known he'd taken. Sam. I called out, my voice shaky. Can you come here for a second? Samantha appeared in the doorway, a concerned look on her face. What's wrong, Em? I held out the letter, unable to find the words to explain. She took it, her eyes widening as she read. Oh, Emma, she breathed. Did you know about this? I shook my head, feeling like the room was spinning. No. I had no idea. According to the letter, Ryan had extremely low sperm count, making it highly unlikely that he could father a child naturally. The doctor recommended further tests and possible treatments, But the prognosis wasn't good. As the reality of what I was reading sank in, 1,000 little moments suddenly clicked into place. Ryan's reluctance to set a timeline for starting a family. His insistence that we were still young and had plenty of time. The way he'd changed the subject whenever I brought up baby names or nursery designs. He knew, I whispered, more to myself than to Samantha. He knew all along, and he never told me. Samantha sat down next to M.E., wrapping an arm around my shoulders. I'm so sorry, Em. That's a hell of a thing to keep secret. I leaned into her embrace, feeling a maelstrom of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, betrayal, grief, they all battled for dominance. But underneath it all was a deep, aching sadness. Not just for the children I might never have, but for the trust that had been irreparably broken. Why wouldn't he tell me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Did he think I'd leave him over this? Samantha shook her head. I don't know, honey. Men can be weird about stuff like this. Maybe he was ashamed, or scared. I stood up abruptly, suddenly feeling too confined in the small room. I need some air, I mumbled, heading for the door. The cool evening air hit me as I stepped onto Samantha's porch, and I took a deep, shuddering breath. The street was quiet, just a few neighbors walking their dogs or chatting in their yards. Normal, everyday life continuing on while my world felt like it was imploding. I sank down onto the porch swing, my mind reeling. How many other secrets had Ryan kept from me? How much of our life together had been built on lies and half-truths? As I sat there, memories began to surface. Ryan's increasing distance over the past year. The way he'd throw himself into work, staying late at the office more and more often. His sudden interest in taking extravagant trips with his mother. It all made a sick kind of sense now. He'd been running. Running from the truth, from me, from the future we'd planned together. And instead of facing it head-on, instead of trusting me to stand by him, he'd chosen to betray me in the worst possible way. I don't know how long I sat there, lost in thought, before I felt Samantha sit down beside me. She didn't say anything, just offered her silent support as I tried to process everything. Finally, I turned to her. I need to talk to him, I said. I need to hear it from him. Samantha nodded, understanding in her eyes. Do you want me to come with you? I shook my head. No, this is something I need to do alone. But, can you drive me? I don't think I should be behind the wheel right now. Of course, she said, squeezing my hand. Whenever you're ready. The drive back to my old house felt surreal. Streets I'd driven 1,000 times before suddenly seemed alien and unfamiliar. As we pulled up in front of the house, I saw Ryan's car in the driveway. At least I wouldn't have to wait for him to get home. You sure you don't want me to wait? Samantha asked as I unbuckled my seatbelt. I managed a weak smile. I'm sure. I'll call you when I'm done, okay? She nodded, worry etched on her face. Okay. Be safe, Em. And remember, you don't owe him anything. With a deep breath, I got out of the car and walked up the familiar path to the front door. My key still worked. I hadn't gotten around to returning it yet. As I stepped inside, I was struck by how different the house felt. It had only been a week, but it already felt like a lifetime ago that I'd called this place home. Ryan? I called out, my voice echoing in the quiet house. I heard movement upstairs, and a moment later, Ryan appeared at the top of the stairs. He looked disheveled, like he hadn't been sleeping well. When he saw me, his eyes widened in surprise. Emma, what are you doing here? I held up the letter from the fertility clinic. We need to talk. The color drained from Ryan's face as he recognized the paper in my hand. Wordlessly, he descended the stairs and led me into the living room. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, the letter between us like a ticking time bomb. How long have you known? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, unable to meet my eyes. About 1.5 years, he admitted quietly. The words hit me like a physical blow. 1.5 years. All those conversations we'd had about starting a family, all those times I'd expressed my fears about waiting too long, he'd known the truth all along. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, fighting to keep my voice from breaking. Did you think I'd leave you over this? Ryan finally looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and fear. I was scared, he whispered. I thought if I could just buy some time, maybe things would change. Maybe the doctors would be wrong. I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. So you lied to me. For over a year, you lied to my face. And then, what? You decided to steal from me and run off with your mother instead of facing the truth. He flinched at my words. I panicked, he said. Mom found out, and she kept pushing me to tell you. But I couldn't. And then she suggested the trip, said it would help clear my head. And the credit card fraud? I pressed. Was that her idea too? Ryan had the grace to look ashamed. No. That was all me. I didn't know how to tell you about any of it. The fertility issues, the money problems at work, it all just spiraled out of control. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his confessions hanging heavy in the air between us. I felt a tangle of emotions, anger, betrayal, grief, and underneath it all, a profound sense of loss for the future we'd planned together. I loved you, Ryan, I said softly. I would have stood by you through anything. But this I can't forgive. He nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. I know. I'm so sorry, Emma. For everything. As I stood to leave, I felt a strange sense of closure. The truth was out now, painful as it was. And with it came the certainty that I'd made the right decision in leaving. Goodbye, Ryan, I said, heading for the door. I hope you find peace with yourself someday. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I felt like I could breathe again. The truth had been revealed, and with it, the last ties binding me to my old life had been severed. It hurt, God, did it hurt. But beneath the pain, I felt something else stirring. Hope. Hope for a future that was entirely my own, unburdened by lies and secrets. I pulled out my phone and called Samantha. Hey, I said when she picked up. Can you come get me? I'm ready to go home. As I waited for her to arrive, I looked back at the house one last time. It was just a building now, no longer the repository of my hopes and dreams. Those, I realized, I carried with me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free to chase them. The weeks following my final conversation with Ryan passed in a blur of paperwork, lawyer meetings, and long nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life had taken such a dramatic turn. The divorce proceedings were underway, and while Ryan didn't contest anything, the process was still emotionally draining. Samantha, bless her, had been my rock through it all. But even she couldn't shield me from the whispers and sidelong glances I got around town. In a small community like ours, news traveled fast, and it seemed everyone had an opinion on my failed marriage. It was on a crisp autumn morning, about a month after I'd left Ryan, that I finally felt ready to face the world again. I'd been hiding out in Samantha's guest room, working remotely and avoiding social interactions as much as possible. But that morning, as I watched the sun rise over the trees in Sam's backyard, I made a decision. It was time to start living again. I think I'm going to look for my own place, I announced over breakfast. Samantha looked up from her coffee, a mix of surprise and concern on her face. Are you sure? You know you're welcome to stay here as long as you need. I nodded, feeling more certain with each passing moment. I'm sure. It's time. I can't hide forever, and I need to start building my own life. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Okay. Then let's find you the perfect place. The next few days were a whirlwind of apartment viewings and negotiations. I finally settled on a small but charming one-bedroom apartment in the heart of downtown. It was close to my favorite coffee shop and within walking distance of the local park. More importantly, it was mine. A space untainted by memories of Ryan or our shared past. Moving day arrived, and with it came a bittersweet realization. As I unpacked my boxes, arranging my belongings in this new space, I was struck by how little I actually had that was truly my own. So much of my life had been intertwined with Ryan's that separating it felt like unraveling a tightly woven tapestry. But with each item I placed, each decision I made about where things should go, I felt a sense of empowerment growing within me. This was my fresh start, my chance to redefine who I was and what I wanted out of life. It was as I was hanging a painting, a vibrant abstract piece I'd bought on a whim years ago but Ryan had never liked, that I heard a knock at the door. Puzzled, I set down my hammer and went to answer it. To my surprise, it was Judy standing there, looking uncomfortable and out of place. "Judy," I said, unable to keep the shock out of my voice. "What are you doing here?" She shifted nervously, clutching her purse like a lifeline. I wanted to talk to you. May I come in?" Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, to shut out this final reminder of my old life. But curiosity got the better of me. I stepped aside, allowing her to enter. Judy looked around the apartment, taking in the half-unpacked boxes and the eclectic mix of furniture. "It's nice," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "What do you want, Judy?" I asked, cutting to the chase. I didn't have the energy for her usual passive-aggressive dance. She took a deep breath, seeming to steel herself. "I wanted to apologize," she said, the words clearly difficult for her. "For everything. For how I treated you, for enabling Ryan's behavior." I stared at her, stunned into silence. In all the years I'd known Judy, I'd never heard her apologize for anything. "I know I wasn't the easiest person to get along with," she continued. "I was jealous, I suppose. Ryan was all I had after his father passed, and I was afraid of losing him." I sank onto the couch, trying to process what I was hearing. "So you decided to help him lie to me? To steal from me?" Judy had the grace to look ashamed. "I didn't know about the credit card," she said softly. "When I found out, I was horrified. I may not have liked you much, Emma, but I never wanted to see you hurt like that." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years of misunderstandings and resentment hanging between us. "Why are you telling me this now?" I finally asked. Judy sighed, suddenly looking every one of her years. "Because I realized how much damage I've done. To you, to Ryan, to myself. I've lost my son, Emma. He won't speak to me anymore. He blames me for everything falling apart." I felt a pang of sympathy, despite everything. "That's not fair. Ryan made his own choices." She nodded, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "I know. But I pushed him. I always pushed him. To be better, to do more, to live up to some impossible standard I'd set. And now I have to live with the consequences of that." As I watched this woman, who had been the bane of my existence for so long, break down in my living room, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, exactly. The wounds were still too fresh for that. But understanding, perhaps. "I can't say it's okay," I said quietly. "Because it's not. You and Ryan hurt me deeply. But I appreciate you coming here. It couldn't have been easy." Judy looked up, a glimmer of hope in her tear-filled eyes. "Does this mean, could we maybe start over?" I shook my head, gently but firmly. "No, Judy. I'm sorry, but that chapter of my life is closed. I need to move forward, and that means letting go of the past, including you and Ryan." She nodded, looking disappointed but not surprised. "I understand. I hope you can find happiness, Emma. You deserve it." As I showed Judy out, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't closure. I wasn't sure I'd ever truly have that, but it was something. A step forward, perhaps. The next few months were a journey of self-discovery. I threw myself into my work, expanding my small business in ways I'd only dreamed of before. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones, slowly rebuilding my social circle without the shadow of Ryan looming over me. There were hard days, of course. Days when the loneliness felt overwhelming, when I missed the comfort of having a partner to share my life with. But there were also days of incredible joy and freedom. The thrill of making decisions solely for myself, of pursuing my passions without compromise. It was on one of these joyful days, as I was celebrating landing a major client for my business, that I ran into Ryan at our old favorite restaurant. He was sitting alone at the bar, looking haggard and worn. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of the old pain. But then I realized something. I felt sorry for him. Sorry that he'd let his fears and insecurities destroy what we'd had. Sorry that he couldn't be honest with me, or with himself. I gave him a small nod of acknowledgement before turning back to my friends. As we laughed and celebrated, I could feel Ryan's eyes on me. But for the first time, I didn't care what he thought. I was happy, truly happy, and I didn't need his approval or anyone else's. Later that night, as I walked home under a sky full of stars, I reflected on how far I'd come. The woman I was now, strong, independent, unafraid to chase her dreams, was a far cry from the one who had discovered those fraudulent charges all those months ago. The aftermath of Ryan's betrayal had been painful, yes. But it had also been transformative. It had forced me to confront my own strengths and weaknesses, to reevaluate what I wanted out of life. As I unlocked the door to my apartment, I smiled to myself. This was my life now, messy, uncertain, but undeniably mine. And I wouldn't have it any other way. The journey wasn't over, I knew that. There would be more challenges ahead, more moments of doubt and fear. But I was ready for them. Because now I knew the truth, I was stronger than any obstacle life could throw my way. I fell asleep that night with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The aftermath had been difficult, but it had led me here, to a place of self-discovery and newfound strength. And for that, in a strange way, I was grateful.